that's where most people hang out. They're on this autopilot loop of trigger, behavior, reward, but their trigger is anxious or worry, right, or what have you, and then their behavior is go on their phone, have a drink, eat food, hang out with a person, distract, numb, distract, right? And then, but they're actually never sitting with their emotions or feeling their emotions. And then the result or reward, they usually end up feeling worse. So that's one of the things I also teach is like kind of like learning how your mind works, and it's built on reward based learning. So pay attention when you get triggered. Like, ooh, I just got triggered. What is that? Where's that coming from? Is it mine? Is it even mine? It could be the guy in the restaurant. So like, is this even my energy? And it's like, oh no. So it's like, all right, well, it's not mine. Because if you don't ask that question, you might take somebody else's energy and your brain creates a story.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Going Out, Looking In, the podcast about the big questions of life, personal growth, and spirituality. My name is Maxi, I'm your host, and it's been a minute, guys. It's been a minute since I sat down on this chair and since I talked to you, I know that. And the reason is that a lot of stuff happened in my private life. And I mean, you know, the world keeps doing its thing and spinning on its axis. And yeah, you know, some events are bigger than others. And yeah, I'm currently really navigating a new territory for me, and it affects everything I'm doing. And I feel like I want to share what it is that I'm currently dealing with and navigating, because, you know, this podcast is so raw and honest and close to my heart that, you know, if something very big happens with me, I cannot not say anything and pretend like life is just, you know, going on as usual, because right now it's different. And that is because the love of my young life and myself have decided to go into a different direction with our romantic relationship. So Julia and myself are in the process of conscious uncoupling, and we are transitioning from a romantic partnership into a loving friendship. And that is, it's a big one for me. It's been the last, you know, it's been 7 years of a beautiful relationship between two souls. And yeah, it's an active decision from me to share this. I also will not share any more details, I guess, as of now, because it obviously also includes another person, and there's just a lot going on. It's just very fresh and everything. So I leave it at that. But, you know, it comes up in the conversation I had with my guest today, and it will potentially come up with, you know, many more conversations. And so I just feel like this is the right thing to do, and also sort of leave it at that and not go any deeper. Yeah. So, having said that, I'm so excited to announce today's guest. I'm speaking with Justin Lovato. I discovered Justin through a conversation of him and another very beautiful soul, Misha, from The Chainless Life, and his podcast. And I listened to a bunch of different episodes that Justin did with other podcasters and YouTubers, and I was just really fascinated by this guy. You know, you just sometimes see people and you cannot put your finger on it, what it is exactly that is sort of resonating with you, but you just know that they have something that you want to have. And so it was for Justin. and myself. I just felt like there's something that he knows that I haven't experienced yet in this human experience. So I invited him to be on the show. So Justin, he is a former bodybuilder actually. He's a breathwork facilitator, a very serious meditator and investigator of life and the human experience, a very wise person who understood life in its entirety and who is living from a place of enlightenment and awakening. And you will see throughout the conversation what I mean by that, and that I'm very serious about it when I'm saying that, you know, he just got it, you know, and he's living from that place, he's sharing from that place. He's working within that space with his clients who he guides within, you know, spiritual work, meaning breath work, plant medicine, cacao ceremonies, but also just holding space and sharing his wisdom and knowledge about, you know, how to work with the body as well. So he includes all those different sort of techniques into his work, helping individuals to live an aligned life. And this is very admirable and very fascinating how he does it. And yeah, it was a very lovely conversation that went really deep very quickly, and a lot of practical knowledge in there about, you know, consciousness, nature of things, the universe. So, you know, we talked really a lot about his journey, his context, his enlightenment, his relationship to himself. And you'll see that there's a very interesting distinction that he makes when it comes to himself and the person that he is sort of embodying in this world. Very interesting, tremendous insight, because it really also helped me, but you'll see about that. We talked about his meditation practice, how he is opening his heart and how he helps clients to keep an open heart through life, through whatever is coming your way, how you can, just stay open. We talked about original thoughts and downloads from the universe, the way that we maybe get lost and how we can find our way back to our essential self, conscious consumerism. Really interesting how Justin is basically relating to everything around him and how he is sort of living from a very conscious place, very present place, and how that is affecting his decisions, his consumer decisions in everyday life. So a lot of stuff that we talked about. I'm very excited to share this one with you. It was a beautiful conversation with a beautiful person. I actually really want to start working with him. I want to, participate in some of his breathwork classes and stuff, because I think it's, he really knows what he's talking about. So I'm curious to see where this is going for myself. And I'm obviously also curious to see where this is going with you. Let me know, please, when you're listening to this on Spotify. There's a new feature where you can interact with me. Let me know what you think about this episode. Also, make sure to, go on the platforms and rate the podcast. I'm not saying this enough. It really helps the podcast. So if you haven't reviewed the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, if you're watching this on YouTube, just like the video, give it a comment, leave anything that came up with you in the comments. It really helps me and us to create even better episodes and invite guests. So, just a little sort of impulse from me. I have to include that a little bit more in my intros. Okay, with all that being said, sorry for the long introduction. I wish you so much fun and enlightenment and love with this episode. And this is Justin Lovato. So thank you so much for taking the time and space to talk with me today, Justin. I, throughout the journey of the podcast, had the pleasure of talking to numerous individuals so far and beautiful souls. And actually, with each and every one of them, the journey has been that I, through different sources or impulses, got in touch with them, with the guests. And it's always something that I find fascinating. And oftentimes I cannot put my finger on it. It's just something that people have about them. And that makes me really want to talk to them and ask them questions. And so it was for you as well. So basically, I think you're really emanating a beautiful, gracious presence and aura. And I have the feeling that there's a lot of wisdom out there and information that we can consume, especially when it comes to, the depth of life and the human experience. However, there's few individuals I came across that are able to really sort of condense and transform and translate those teachings and the wisdom and the experiences that they collected and share them. And I think that's incredibly powerful. And you are just someone that I found is really well versed in that and is really capable of doing that. Sometimes not even with saying something, you're just like, I can sort of feel it even through a screen. And so that being said, I guess I want to start with finding out a little bit more about the context that might be relevant, necessary to also listeners who haven't seen or heard something about you previously. What do you feel like is important or maybe interesting to share from where you're coming from and where you are right now?
Yeah, I guess what essentially I do, I wouldn't call it work, but what I do in each and every day is to essentially be of service. And I think I've always been in this line of service, consciously or unconsciously. And as I started getting into my own personal work with consciousness and stillness and meditation, I also became very aware that most people were suffering from the mind, the programs and conditioning and limitations of the mind. And I became really curious as to why I didn't suffer like most people were. And so I started kind of like really looking within to try to understand essentially the difference. And I came to the awareness that I exist at a very, very extreme level of presence. The childlike presence that children all have, mine simply never left. Yeah, I consistently am curious and always asking questions on everything in a curious manner, in a non-judgmental manner. And I think this consistent state of presence also allows me to receive original thoughts, downloads, if you will, due to the mind being still, due to being present. I always explain presence as a portal. And if we can quiet the mind, if we can truly be present, that portal is always open for loving awareness or consciousness or original thought to come through and hopefully help this person become more aware of its behaviors and how it operates and its perspectives and how it could possibly shift. And so I first, when I first got into this work of being of service and trying to help people understand the power of presence, I first was using my words, which is very helpful. Um, but I realized if I could teach them how to quiet the mind, hold space for the mind, to no longer identify with the mind, um, they're able to do the work. They're able to connect the dots. They're able to remember who they truly are, what they're truly a part of. And so I'm a person who helps people awaken, if you will, or at least guide them through the process of the awakening, which is a lot of fun, and really, again, like understanding the power of stillness, the present moment,
Mm-hmm.
and helping people introduce this through modalities, through conversation, through the breath, through training, even through the cold. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what it comes down to, are these powerful present moments that allow us to have this awareness shift. I realize that most people suffer due to lack of awareness, right? And so how can we help people become more aware? And that's by teaching them the power of presence. So it's presence gives us awareness, then leads to powerful behavioral shifts and changes within our everyday lives.
Mm. So powerful, and I think very different to a lot of people's journeys. Also, one of the things that really stood out for me was what you were just sharing regarding, yeah, your starting point that might be a little bit different to the starting point of many people I know who are on the path of looking inside. Essentially my own as well. So, working my way back, and I feel like you just didn't have as much, road ahead to work back. And, what really, really moved me, I think it's very beautiful in a sense of, and I guess what I mean with that, when it comes to your father and your personal like background, and how you were able to, from like a very young age, sort of like navigate abuse or like violence or any sort of behavior that is potentially causing harm. And you were really, at least this is what I received, you were crystal clear on what was going on, and you were able to extract yourself from that and see things in a sort of broader perspective, for, I guess, how it actually is, remarkable, really admirable, and I think that is also why it was so fascinating for me, because you also use the word enlightenment and awakening very, very casually, and but it doesn't make me not believe you or something. It actually just the opposite, which is not the case for many people, I have to say. And so I would love to talk a little bit about that, like basically sort of like the access to, the universal consciousness and wisdom, like, and also the like enlightenment, if you will. What are your experiences with that, and also when you're working with people, like, because the vibe I'm getting is, for you, it's achievable, for everyone.
Of
And
course.
so I would be curious, like, how you teach that, or how you found it out for yourself, and then also on maybe also your opinion on how the common perception around awakening and enlightenment is, and I don't know how you maybe also want to change that in a way.
Mm. Yeah, I think conversations are incredibly powerful, and the way that we have them is very important. I think since I do a lot of this work, and I really do walk the walk as well. Like, I wake up, I do my meditations daily, pretty much, and I also do another one in the afternoon. I really make it a point to be present through my day and to do activities that require my attention, that require my presence. So I do a lot of the actual inner work, and I feel like that's important to raise your vibration, to have your energy riding high,
Mm-hmm.
to be that light, to be that love. And when you do this work, you allow yourself to really grow in powerful ways, to remove judgment from all areas of your life, to really not um, respond from the ego. It really does truly dissolve more and more and more, and you can recognize it and not respond from it better and better each day. Eventually, it's mostly not there. So when you can create that level of light and love within yourself, when you have these type of calls or even these types of podcasts, it's received much differently because I'm a mirror, right? It allows you to see that within you, and you feel safe. There's no judgment coming from me, which allows you to also remove that within you. So conversations are very powerful, but I feel like the energy has to be appropriate for there to be the ability to actually look at things without shame or guilt or judgment. So I think that's a big component of my work, are these types of conscious conversations in a really safe environment, whether it's in person or even through a screen. The feedback is that it's felt, and people can truly be heard, and possibly even for the first times within themselves. Most people don't know how to truly speak on things and feel their emotions, and to have the ability to do that is really powerful. The next thing is introducing them just to the language of awakening and enlightenment, and using those types of terms, and kind of talking about certain things, like asking them questions like, who are you? Or when you say I, who are you referring to? Or who sees when you see? Or who hears when you hear? So asking them unique questions that they can think about in a safe set and setting is really powerful. And we get to have fun exploring that. So we start planting known seeds. They're known. That's why they sound familiar, because you already know. You know everything that I'm already talking about. We are the one. We are the same. I am you. You are me. And I make that very clear. I let them know they fully know. It's just the mind gets in the way. We get into establishing that you have a mind, but you are not the mind. That you have thoughts, but you are not the thoughts. And so I have a lot of fun asking them, if you aren't your thoughts, if you aren't your feelings, if you are not your emotions, whose are they? And that's a fun question. And the answer is the person. The person has thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And so if you're not the thoughts, the feelings, and emotions, if you're not the person, who are you? And that's a fun question to ask somebody. And so these kind of get the wheels kind of stirred. Some people don't have an answer. Other people, the soul? It's a good answer. And start playing with that. And then I let them know, like, oftentimes they are operating from only this one self, the person. And when we get quiet, we can shift into different selves, higher selves, if you will. And then we can guide this self, this person, with loving awareness in these profound present moments. And I often tell them that you are, as simplify as possible, you are the parent and the child in this situation. And how can we slide into the seat of the parent, the loving parent that can guide this child who has these conditionings, these programs, these beliefs, these ideologies, and to help them break free of these mind movies, these thought movies, and to help them see what they're truly a part of, which is the infinite universe. And so these types of conversations they kind of go just like this, how I'm speaking. And then introducing him to the breath, which is very powerful. Meditation's amazing. It's presence, it's the beingness, but oftentimes the mind is very, very chaotic and very, very loud. So the breath, I feel, is an important tool to move a lot of the energy that's stored within the body, allowing the mind to actually quiet down to where you become nothing, nobody, or one, to separate, not separate, but shift into that higher self. And then the work kind of does itself. It's really quite beautiful. You know, they guide themselves in this space. They basically start shamaning themselves in these moments. Because that's what a shaman really is. They kind of remove the fear for the person, for the human. Right? The human has the fears. And so the shaman is more so the placebo, I feel, in many ways, to help with the fear. But they can obviously shaman themselves when they slide into that higher self and start holding space for their person and whatever it is they need to heal from their past experiences or whatever anxiety they have about the future.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot in there that really resonates with me. Also, again, very different approach, which I really like. Shamaning yourself, taking that one. I heard you talk about your first plant medicine journeys and encounters, and basically also shamaning yourself on them. DMT as being one of them, where people and friends around me, they're like, dude, man, that's a 10 out of 10. You don't want to mess around with that kind of stuff, which I don't intend to mess around with it. I have like intentions and sort of like a reverence for the power of it. However, before hearing about your experience, it never even crossed my mind to do it on my own, especially for the first time. But I guess, going back to the starting point where you are and the level of consciousness and presence that you have, I guess, is also sort of to be taken into account when doing those sort of things.
Very much. Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
That's important because what's stopping, right? What's stopping the ability to shaman oneself is the mind, the fear, the ego. Right? So if you don't have the fear, if the mind is still, if the mind is present, there isn't any distortions for when you get that download. Right? Because that's what's happening. You're opening the portal and the download can come through. Well, if the person has all these fears of letting go, of control, of this, that, and the other, that can make for an interesting ceremony, because it's never a bad trip. It's always the mind that creates it, or the body that creates it due to its thoughts, feelings, and emotions, its experiences. So if you are free from those experiences, if you don't identify with your traumatic experiences, if you don't even see it as trauma, right? You can keep zooming out. There really is no trauma. There's just isness. Right? There is no good or bad. So you can really start to be okay with life as it is. Life is sometimes messy, it's scary and hard, but it's not personal. It's never
Absolutely
personal.
not. No.
So that's how I was able to see it as a child too, with my abusive dad and our household. That's why I didn't take on that energy. I didn't make it about me, which is what most people do. They feel, and it's very, very normal, by the way. It's very strange that I didn't do this. To feel unlovable, to feel unworthy, to feel not enough from the way that my father treated me. Most cases, we would interpret it as I'm not lovable, I am not enough when we become abused, when we are judged in such profound ways. That's the behavior, the I am not enough behavior, which most every single person suffers from. And this is very common, the I am not enough. Even if you have great parents, most of the time parents are raising us to be socially acceptable. And they do this by punishing or rewarding us. And the way they come up with this grading system of punishment versus reward is by society and what they deem as success or okay or not okay. And so and that comes from a place of fear. Parents raising their children out of fear of what society thinks of them as a parent. So that fear is passed down to the child. And then usually it's amplified in school systems with pass or fail. So children are trying to get good grades to be enough, to be smart enough, to be praised by parents and social status to be enough. And then also the dogmatic religions, heaven or hell. Are you good enough to get into heaven? Are you good enough? Are you good enough? So this is a very collective behavior, program perspective, if you will, of I am not enough, but it's just the story. That's the funny part. It's just a story. It's not true. It's just a program.
I mean, it's rendering in, I don't know, man, 8K, crystal clear and sharp. And so the illusion is nearly perfect. And I guess there's a couple of things that really fascinate me. And I think that's really coming from a really personal sort of point, well, like space from me now, where I'm so curious is always like the fall from the garden, basically. So basically what I want to ask you is, why do you think did this happen in the first place? Why did we get so lost, because it's clearly so beautiful, I think, and really, admirable and sort of really something to strive for, to overcome the ever chatting mind, and to see things for how they are, and live from that place, which still, allows you to do all the beautiful things that this human experience has to offer. So I guess my question is just like, why do you think, did we lose that, and how? Yeah.
I don't think we ever lost it. So let's talk about the definition of enlightenment, at least for me.
Yeah.
So enlightenment is the understanding that the universe is consciousness, and that consciousness is infinite, it's pure, and consciousness that is the universe is experiencing itself through everything, through everyone, all at once, all the time, through different levels of awareness. Through you, through me, through my dog, through everything, the trees, the rocks, birds, bees, the space that you can't see, the blackness in space, the sun, everything in this universe is the universe experiencing itself. And I think that's what's beautiful about this polarity, about this duality, gives the experience. If it was already perfect, what would be to experience? So the yin and the yang are just what is. There is no good or bad. There is no right or wrong. There is no supposed to be anywhere. It's just the polarity of things for us to fully experience and see how we feel about that experience. Does it align with who we are? And the only way to do that is to go through it. Again, like, there is no good or bad. That's a human construct. There is no trauma in nature. Yeah, there's no trauma in nature. I mean, planets are consistently smashing into each other, and it's just happening. Yeah, it's not bad that it happens. It's not good that it happens. So, like, when you can zoom out, so to speak, from making it personal and be at peace with what is, then you're truly free. It's when we resist reality where we find divisiveness within ourselves.
I'm so, like, right now, we talked about it briefly in the beginning, as I'm navigating this sort of really new situation in my relationship. This is exactly what is coming up. Like, can I be in harmony with what truly is happening? Because it is happening. It's clearly happening.
It's just happening. The ego resists. The ego resists. The ego tries to grab hold, it doesn't want to feel the discomfort, it doesn't want to feel the pain, it doesn't want to feel the fear. But that's why we're here, to have those experiences, to feel all these things, not to avoid them, not to resist them, not to have them. I think oftentimes people feel that life is supposed to be all perfect and happiness and sunshines and rainbows, but that's not it at all. It's to experience the full experience of this human experience, and that includes suffering, and that includes pain and frustration and death. It just comes down to how do you approach those things? How do you hold space for those things? Do you close or do you stay open?
Mm.
That's it. That's, to me, that's it. Do you close or do you stay open during all situations, good or bad? Can you be at peace during all situations, good or bad, quote unquote? And then you realize it's much easier to do that if you don't see things as good or bad. Right? You can keep zooming out, so to speak.
Yeah, and what I also wanted to quickly point out is what really helped me to like, it's very pragmatic, but just a verbal distinction. And I've heard you do that plenty of times when you say the person and you refer to yourself as the person having this human experience, and you know, you being the timeless seer, the essence, whatever you want to call it. It just it helps. It helps on a cognitive level through language to understand what is actually happening and to create some sort of distance and compassion also for this person who is so much. It's a lot, you know. I've also heard someone the other day, I think it was Bashar, like a guy who's channeling, and he also said, like, basically, you know, the human experience, it's not an per se easy one to basically navigate with all the input we are receiving and stuff. Again, not judging it as good or bad, but it's just a very high sort of high level, high frequency existence where a lot of stuff and information is coming in, and the human, you know, the sensory suit is incredibly sensitive and complex and multifaceted. So I think it's just to develop some sort of compassion for that, you know, and holding space is also something that really can be done very, very simply by just. I was just like one day, like yesterday, it was just like really painful for me, the situation I'm in right now. And then I was just like really just talking to my person. And it's just like, wow, Maxi, you were just like, this is heavy right now. I feel that, you know, it even goes to the lower back, you know, there's like some sort of tension there. Maybe you want to, you know, take it slow today. And so it helps. And, you know, you might have heard that or read that in a self-help book already. But when it comes with this deeper understanding of like who is talking to who, then I think it becomes really deep. And then you're just like, I've been here looking at what is going on the whole time. There never has been a time I was not looking at this person, because you are literally the one who notices everything. Otherwise, how would you know what's going on? Like, but
That's brilliant. I love
yeah.
that. Yeah, being able to really slide into that. It's funny. It's like when we first start awakening, we still operate from the person very much. When we say I, it's like I have this trauma, I have these things, and they're referring to the person. But as you keep meditating and shifting into these higher selves, whether it be the soul or the one self, right, or possibly even the void through extreme meditation or plant medicine, right, you start operating from these different selves, zooming out, so to speak. And then you realize what you're able to truly hold space for. And so you're essentially all of the selves, obviously, but you can really guide these maybe lower selves that are struggling with an ego, right? That are going through it, that have maybe experienced trauma, loss. Maybe they are confused. Maybe they're programmed through a system. Maybe, and they just need this guidance, this beautiful guidance. And we can really start guiding this beautiful person to loving awareness, to a more conscious space. And it actually starts to join consciousness in a way. It upgrades. It keeps getting these downloads on how to be more love and how to remember what it's a part of. And it becomes more intelligent. The person becomes more intelligent. The person becomes more conscious, becomes more aware. It also becomes more powerful. It can start manifesting. It can start creating. It sees that it's limitless. And so it starts joining the infinite consciousness, if you will. And that's why meditation is so profound to do on a daily basis and get really, really deep. So we can remember. The hard part is remembering. That's the hard part, is remembering. But if you get still on a daily basis, you soon will always remember that you are consciousness having this beautiful experience through different levels of awareness. And you get to really enjoy every part of it, even the downs. Like, it's part of the human experience, and you can fully love that experience and open to that experience and be grateful for that experience. And life becomes really magical at that point.
Yeah. The depth and the sounds and the tones and the highs and lows. I think I also want to go to the opening and closing of the heart. You also talk about that. To witness the depths to which the heart can feel, and the melodies it can play. It's incredible. And once we remove that judgment and that sort of labeling, it becomes, I don't know, this picture, there's like a metaphor coming to me. I don't know. And I also, original thoughts. I love that. I so love that. Reminds me of something I talked about with another beautiful soul, who basically told the story of Prince and Michael Jackson, where apparently Michael Jackson was saying, he receives these downloads constantly and he has to write them down, because if he doesn't, Prince will, and so it's floating around, it's all there, and it's for us to be at a stage to receive that, and I think this is so beautiful. And so original thoughts, again, language, I think, is very well put, because it's just like this infinite wisdom that is accessible for all of us, and it's such a rich source that it just requires a little bit of trust, I guess, in the beginning, once you're not really familiar with the power of it. But once you tasted those waters, also, like, one thing I like, synchronicity, once you tasted those waters, synchronistic numbers and appearances and events that are happening, it's just incredible. It's just like incomprehensible. And that's also so funny then when the very limited ego and mind is sort of confronted with the universal consciousness and wisdom, and it's just like trying to make sense of it. It's actually a bit funny to see that sometimes. No, it's just like comes up with, okay, it must be coming from here and then to there, and but at some point it's just like becomes so big and so abstract that you're just like surrendering, and then you're just like, okay, well, there's no way I could explain how this magic could happen. But yeah, it's just some things that were coming from what you were sharing.
I love it. Yeah, and then when we really fall into this space of fully allowing and fully trusting, once we remove, the clinging and the grabbing and the resisting to reality, we get to truly be fully present. And when we're truly present, more fully connected, then we get to actually experience, I think, things on such a profound level. I don't think I'm even fully aware of that yet. I think there's definitely still parts of me that maybe have some maybe buried shadow work, maybe, or maybe some
Mm.
ego here and there, of course. Uh, what's good is I don't really react to it anymore. I can feel it, and I'm really good at alchemizing now, my energy immediately, and including also like karma. You can write your karma right away, I would say. Like for instance, I'll just use an example. Like say there's an individual who you weren't very fond of in your past, and now you are more enlightened, and that individual just walks through the door. So there might be a autopilot trigger response of like, oh, this person, right? Like, this person, I don't care for this person, and you cast judgment. And right away, you feel that. You feel when you cast the judgment, you feel the energy within your chest or within your throat. You feel that judgment. And so, if that were to happen to me, because it's just a trigger or autopilot reaction, right, of my person, I then can tell him like, hey, correct it, send that individual love, send that individual light, let them know that they're safe, that they're not judged, that they are welcome. And I'll say that to the individual who my person just on autopilot judged, and I'll correct and alchemize it just like that, and then that feeling is completely gone, and that person feels welcome, safe, and loved in my household or wherever we are at. So I get
Mm.
really good at anytime I feel the trigger of fear or judgment or what have you, I can alchemize it immediately and correct it immediately. Um, and you can even do it with somebody that say is work going through it. Say you're at a restaurant and someone's being really rude to the waiter. Well, you could feel that anxiety from the waiter. You can feel the anxiety from the customer, right? And you can feel it within yourself, the tension, the ego in the room. And so you can feel that and then alchemize it for them as well. You can send them love, send them light, send them love, send them light, and you can alchemize them as well. And you can remove the energy from the room. So you get really good at wielding and alchemizing energy as you go through your day. You can help people work through their ego on a silent level just by giving them your attention, your love, your presence. And the same thing goes for the karma, I would say. You don't have to come back a bunch of times to write your karma. You can just be authentically sorry and then authentically forgive oneself in that very moment. It's done. Learn from it, apologize for it, and truly forgive yourself. And then it's done. So you can get good about that too. So whether you've done something in the past or you did something earlier today that you don't feel great about, authentically apologize. You don't even have to do it to the person. You could do it to the universe. Authentically forgive yourself, and you could be rid of that karma as well.
Mm. Wow, that's really powerful. I really like that, especially when you can do it for other people. I think this is wow. Yeah, I haven't actually. Yeah, I haven't done it, but that's a very beautiful thing, because I actually wanted to ask you also earlier on when we were talking about where one is starting on that journey. I wanted to ask you um, how you relate to people who are not on the same frequency, basically compassion and empathy.
Love them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it.
So
It's just love
the
them.
answer.
Yeah, love them exactly. Yeah, because I don't need them to be anywhere. I don't need them to be anything, right? Because that's also ego, needing somebody to be a certain way for you to feel okay, for the world to be okay. That's all ego. Yeah, so you get good about like, oh, okay, that's my ego needing things to be this, that, and the other. But reality is that people are figuring it out, and people are going through it, and that's okay, and that's what it is. Like, what can you do? I could just love the shit out of that person. I could love them and I could be here for them. I'm not going to judge them. That doesn't help because, again, we're mirrors. That's what's beautiful is like remembering everything is energy, really authentically remembering that we are all one and we are all fully connected. That's a very, very important thing that I think a lot of people also forget. The law of attraction isn't just something, it is the universal truth. The law is the law. So I realized if I can see the loving awareness, if I can see source, the universe in that unconscious being, then I mirror that person for them to see that within themselves. And that's what shifts consciousness. It's to see the love through the unconsciousness, see the consciousness through the unconsciousness. And when we do that, we give the opportunity for these radical shifts in enlightenment, or awakening, for everybody. It's when we judge, because then they feel that judgment. That's what's fascinating about all of this, is that we really have the power within ourselves to guide people just by loving them when they're stressed, when they're going through it, when they're acting out. It's just usually hard because we take it personally. Our ego gets in the way. It hits usually triggers within us from our own childhood. So it's a little bit harder to not become reactive, respond from a place of fear or lack. But if you do the self work by meditating every day, and you let your person know, like, hey, those were experiences. Yes, they were hard and in some ways traumatic, so to speak, but it wasn't personal. It never was, and it never has been. And then the person starts to see that as well. The person starts to have more empathy. The person starts to see that we're all figuring it out, and then can have love for those individuals. Mm.
I wanted to maybe touch quickly on meditation as a tool. I know you are very rigid on your own structure around it, and you really prioritize it, and you want to make sure that you make space for that. I'm very much so myself, to be honest. I'm really I'm seeing the importance and the significance it has on my centeredness and my grounding. However, there's quite a few people, since also I became more vocal about it in my circle, that beautiful souls, and really like also very intelligent and everything, and they're really curious and exploring those higher states of consciousness. However, some of them have tremendous trouble with meditating. They really struggle to calm down, physically, first of all, and then also mentally. So they really struggle, and then they basically end up not doing it anymore. But I know that I actually have it here somewhere where you said, if there's one thing you want to share to the whole world, it would be just like be still. And I resonate with that. So I'm like subscribing and say yes. But now when looking at those other people I was just talking about, so what is your opinion about people really struggling with that? And sort of like, do you think that there's other sort of like forms of becoming still, or is meditation really sort of the ultimate one and you just have to find your way back to it or something?
Yeah, again, it's having those conversations when they say, I'm having trouble, my mind is this. So they're already speaking from the person again. So that's a big shift, right? So it's like, okay, well, it's not you are consciousness. So your person, your sentient being, has a busy mind that won't shut off. Your person, who has this energy possibly trapped in its vessel, has trouble sitting still to meditate. Okay, well, logically, what can we do to help this person move this energy around? What can we do to help this person quiet the mind down? What behaviors can we become aware of that maybe aren't serving it, and to make those changes? So again, you have to slide into that higher self seat and start guiding the person who will be resistant, who will be afraid, who has an ego, who will come up with all the excuses of not to sit down, and so forth. So you have to maybe come up with gimmicks, or have your person become clear. Yeah, figure out how your person works. For me, he when I speak to him in the morning when he's resistant, it's playful. It's like playful banter. Like if he's resistant with doing meditation, I'm like, bro, get the fuck up. Get up. After the first round, what's up. And he's like, yeah, I got you. Right? And it's like there's that little bit of dialogue. So the dialogue's important, as opposed to saying like, I don't want to do it. So So that's the difference. I think a lot of people are still operating from the person, therefore very much asleep, right? They're in the dream as only the person. So that's a huge shift in that awareness, is realizing that, okay, you're not the person, you're not the thoughts, you're not the feelings or the emotions, but you still have to help this person become more aware of how to live a more divine, more aligned life. And part of that is reconnecting to the divine on a daily basis, aka meditation. And so if it has a busy mind that has trouble, maybe pay attention, like, wow, like, am I overstimulated? Am I having too much coffee? Am I consuming a lot of information on social media? Or am I watching this blue screen or this TV all the time? Like, maybe the music I'm listening to. What about the food am I eating? Like, what vibration are all these things at that could possibly be making me more anxious, that doesn't allow me to actually sit down? So again, like, all inner dialogue, all like self-awareness type of questions. And that's one thing that I think a lot of people don't do, is actually integrate once they start doing the work, which makes the work kind of difficult. So like, like, the whole reason why we're becoming present is so that you can become aware of the behaviors that you aren't aware of, that you are on autopilot engaging in each and every day, that are actually causing you to possibly suffer or to be at a low vibration. So I understand that getting still allows me to become simply aware of the behaviors that are in my blind spots. And so I simplify it. It's like, okay, this is just a tool. And at first the tool is hard because the person, not you, the person doesn't like change. It also is fear of the unknown, very much human characteristic. Anxiety is a human characteristic from like caveman days, so you don't have anxiety, the person does. And so you can be like, hey, I know you're anxious. I know you're anxious about the unknown. And I know you're anxious about possibly sitting with this wound that you have not been able to sit with yet. And I know that's probably why you're avoiding it, right? Sitting in that thing that's going to come up, that's stopping you from fully connecting. You might have to sit with that and fully feel that emotion that you've been not wanting to feel, that you have not been to avoid. So that voice that comes up that says, yeah, I'll do the meditation starting Monday. Like, well, that's the person. Whose voice is that? That you can start differentiating who's speaking. That might even be the ego voice. Like, I'll start later. I'll do it later. It's the same thing like when we want to eat clean. Why do we want to eat clean? That's the more conscious stuff, like eat clean, eat healthy, right? And then the ego is like, start Monday. And you start hearing, you ever seen the cartoon of the angel and the person and the devil?
I don't think so.
It's a pretty famous cartoon. You're the first person that says no, so most people will be able to, they'll know. So there's a cartoon, or like usually like it was even in Aladdin, the movie Aladdin back
Yeah,
in the day,
okay.
where it's speaking
Yeah,
and
I
the
get.
genie in it, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, if you think of it in this terms, the person's the person in the situation, the angel's the higher self, and the devil's the ego. And usually people are operating between these three selves on a given basis, right? Usually people are not people, but usually consciousness is operating between these three
Yeah,
states
yeah.
in this space right now, right? So you get really good at like, who's speaking right now, and you get really good at knowing when the ego speaks, and you're like, I'm good right now, like, you get out of here. And then you get really good at listening to the higher self, and the higher self's like, yeah, do this and do this. And as the mind becomes quieter, you're connected to that higher self even more. And that's where the downloads come through even more. That you can hear it clear as day, the original thought, the conscious thought. So it's about quieting the fear-based mind and the ego so that you can actually hear the good angel, the higher self, being like, you should do this, guiding you, so to speak. And then over time, the person realizes like, oh man, love is always a better choice. it's and plus the brain is built on reward-based learning. So also the brain is kind of funny. It's always going to choose the bigger, better behavior. And once we realize that, then we just have to introduce our person to a better behavioral choice. Over time, it'll start to automatically choose that. That'll become the new autopilot. Because right now, most people become triggered, and then unconsciously they engage into a behavior that truly doesn't serve them. And then they unconsciously never ask themselves, was that behavior actually good for me? But the reason why the brain creates this habit loop around this poor behavior that's happening is because of the quick feeling of dopamine, if you will, right? It's like, oh, here's a quick fix. But you have to like talk to the person, be like, well, how did that actually make you feel? So if I'm anxious due to a thought, right, a thought creates anxiety trigger within me. I could on autopilot reach for my phone to cope, numb, or distract myself from that feeling. Well, after I'm done that phone, I didn't actually. So since I went on my phone and distracted myself, I never sat with that feeling to process it, to understand where it came from. So then after I get off the phone, the result or reward of that unconscious behavioral choice, I'm still anxious. And
Yeah.
then it just loops right back around again. So that's where most people hang out. They're on this autopilot loop of trigger, behavior, reward, but their trigger is anxious or worry, right, or what have you, and then their behavior is go on their phone, have a drink, eat food, hang out with a person, distract, numb, distract, right, and then but they're actually never sitting with their emotions or feeling their emotions, and then the result or reward, they usually end up feeling worse. So that's one of the things I also teach is like kind of like learning how your mind works, and it's built on reward based learning. So pay attention when you get triggered. Like, ooh, I just got triggered. What is that? Where is that coming from? Is it mine? Is it even mine? It could be the guy in the restaurant. It's like, is this even my energy? And it's like, oh no. So it's like, all right, well, it's not mine. Because if you don't ask that question, you might take somebody else's energy and your brain creates a story, which is kind of wild, right? So you can be like using somebody else's energy, and that can hit like maybe a wound that you haven't dealt with, could trigger that in your mind, and then that becomes your reality for that brief moment. And then you unconsciously want to remove like this gross feeling that you're having that was given to you by somebody else who was yelling at a waiter, and you then like dive into some form of behavior that's really not good for you either. And you'll realize like, okay, well, I need to start becoming aware of when this happens so I can actually help my person pick a bigger, better behavior, a loving behavior. And it's always going to be presence. It's always presence. There's nothing outside of it. There's nothing bigger or better than presence, aka love. Because presence and stillness is the same frequency as love. So that's the beauty part about this. So anytime that you become triggered or your wound gets hit or something happens, like it's a no-brainer, so to speak, to pick presence, whether that be the breath and meditation, the cold, because it forces you into presence, the heat, yoga, training, a run, dancing, right? Presence, whatever can pull you into the present moment. And then when you find that presence, the mind movie that's creating the feeling is no longer there because it's not real to begin with. It's a mind movie. So that's why people suffer. They get pulled into their mind movies, and that becomes their reality, and that creates the feeling within them. So, and then you can ask your person after they say chose a present behavior, you ask them like, how do you feel? And then he'll be like, I feel better. And then there's data. It stores. And then you do it again, and then you do it again. And guess what happens? Because again, the brain is built on reward-based learning. Eventually, that becomes the new autopilot habit loop. So you'll become triggered and you're like, hey, I'm going to go for a walk. And it's just like a thing that happens. You get triggered like, hey, I'm going to go sit out in the sun. I'm like, okay. I'm going to get triggered. Hey, I'm going to do some breath work in the bedroom for like 10 or 15 minutes to move this out of me. Right? And that becomes your new way of dealing or handling or holding space for whatever comes at you in life. And what's kind of cool is like, as a lot of times the thought movies, as you do your healing and your work and you keep zooming out and not taking things personally and not seeing things as trauma, a lot of those mind movies, they just never exist anymore. So you're free of all those mind movies. They're gone. And that creates a lot of space for presence.
Yeah.
Right? Now imagine if you understand it's a human condition to be anxious about the unknown, uncertainty, and then you can realize like, okay, I can even zoom out of that human behavior. I can zoom out and be like, I can accept that I won't have always the answers. I can accept that there's unknown and uncertainty, and I can be at peace with that. And then you can remove that. You can remove the whole anxiety behavior out of the human as well. So then what are you left with? If you're not worried about the unknown, if you're not worried about your past, what's left? Presence. Pure presence for original thoughts and downloads and epiphanies and ideas and creativity to come through, to fully be here, to fully connect.
Dude, it's so true. I so much resonate. And the thing is, I'm more, the more people come into my life, and I share this podcast, for example, with, they ask me, so what is this about? And then I go, okay, now I gotta find words for what we're talking about. And I come up with, it's personal growth, it's a little bit of spirituality and yada yada. And then they get hung up on the word spirituality. And just now, the last part, like the bit where you shared what you shared, I could extract that, and it's just like, here's 50 years of psychotherapy, summed up in 5 minutes. This is just, I don't know, what we are talking about is just life. How does life work? Like, how do you navigate the human experience? I mean, this is what's going on, and this is just important to understand. I don't know. It's fucking important, man. I don't know.
It is. We really break free of the mind, like presence is the key to psychological freedom. It's all it is. Like, human beings suffer because of their mind movies and their programs within the mind that they received as children. That's all it is. That's all it is that they're prisons to their programs and to their beliefs and limitations. That's all it is. So the big thing to drive home is like, well, you aren't your mind. You're not your thoughts. You have thoughts, but they're not your thoughts. You're the witness of the thoughts. You're the observer of the thoughts, right? So it's like hammering that home. But it's hard for people, unless they meditate, to connect those dots. So that's why the combination with the work that I do is so vital. So basically, my work is a lot of mentorship through these types of conversations, right? So I talk to people usually once a week for about an hour who work with me. And then all the other days, they're doing breath work and meditation. So like, they speak to me, connect some dots, or they feel some truth within them. Like, this sounds familiar, because they already know, right? They already know, like, oh, this sounds familiar. And then when they meditate, it connects it even more. And then we have a conversation while they're meditating, It just connects all the dots. And believe it or not, like, most of my clients, I really only have them for a short period of time, because they're done. Yeah, they're good. Yeah, they're absolutely good. They're like doing all the same cool stuff that I'm talking about, and they're becoming aware of how to manage their person and heal with their person. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And I'm not doing anything besides just teaching presence. Just teaching presence. That's all it is presence, is stillness, like, and really hammering that home, and like figuring out how we can get people present, and then just having these really fun conversations of reminding them that they aren't the person, so to speak.
Absolutely. It's really a muscle you train, and I really can share from personal experience that it makes your life way better. I'm like, the situation I'm in right now, I don't even want to imagine where I would be if I hadn't done this work. I mean, I would drown in emotions. I would not be able to sit here, because this is the apartment of my partner and myself. And we are still living here together, and I'm recording this podcast. And I don't know, it's just like, essentially the reality that I'm in hasn't changed one iota. I mean, or very slightly. I don't know. There's just like really small physical changes that happened since we parted ways, or sort of like this dynamic shifted. However, this thing has a lot to say about what changed. And so this is important, and it's really immediately playing out in your life, and you can benefit from it. And something that I wanted to, okay, so two things, but okay, let's first go quickly back to meditation. When you say, that's just like, I'm just curious, how do you meditate? Is there like a specific method you're using? I found, I also tried a little bit things. I was spending some time in a Zen monastery. It's really minimalistic there. You don't get any instructions on what to do, basically. It's just like sit down and be quiet. And then yeah, now I'm also moving more into first do breath work, then meditation, because I have the feeling I'm just like easier. I don't know, I can skip 20 minutes of just sitting by doing breath work before and then sitting down. But I would just be curious, like how do you meditate? Yeah.
It's a great question. So the meditation that I created and built for a lot of my programs and what I lead at my events is transcendental meditation, essentially becoming nothing, becoming nobody. So that's the meditation I do every single morning, my own 60-minute meditation. I put my own program on and I listen
That's
to my
awesome.
own prompts. Yeah, so I just listen to that, and it's more of a shamanic approach where I'm guiding my person to nothingness, just to simply be. And breath work is a big part of it. And I think breath work is the most profound tool that we can use into doing this work, because I think oftentimes remembering that we aren't the mind is incredibly hard, especially when the mind is so loud and possibly very, very destructive.
Yeah.
So I think we have to approach this from also a very logical standpoint. So waking up and realizing, like, if I want to really create some stillness within my person, the best thing would not to go on my phone right away in the morning, right? Or maybe not to have coffee before my meditation,
Yeah.
right? So just simple little adjustments like that could be very powerful. So I wake up, every morning at 5 a.m., say what's up to my dog, and I get right down on the ground. I go into my meditation room, and it's just about beingness. And during that beingness, what allows me to fall into that state of beingness, for that portal to open, for more information to possibly come through, I use the breath. The breath is a really great way to, one, it gives your person's mind something to focus on, something like the breath. So it's giving your attention to something acutely for a period of time, which is a really great way to manipulate your mind to be present, right? So the breath is very powerful. Two,
Mm-hmm.
you're moving all that energy around in and out of your body. So if you are an individual that has not sat with their emotions and you haven't let them release, or you hold the trauma within your body, this is a great way to start releasing that. And if you release that, you'll be way more at peace just to begin with. Like, you'll feel more settled, less anxious, less overwhelmed, less restless, just by breathing out the energy, releasing it back out. So the combination of doing something that requires your attention, your presence, and the combination of removing or moving this energy around will let you fall into a meditative state. Because we don't want to try to meditate. You can't try and meditate. It's like how Alan Watts always says, you can't try to be Zen and be Zen, you're just Zen. So you can't try to meditate. So trying to quiet your mind is kind of silly. What you need to do is do a certain level of activity, or some type of activity, if you will, to allow your mind to fall into a meditative state, to become nothing, to fall into that beingness. And there's levels of beingness. So at first you might only, like, be there for a few moments, and then the mind kind of creeps back in and pulls you from that space. And I think understanding, like, okay, well, this is work. This is the part of that work. Right now my mind is super chatty. It gets in the way. Like, it's not going to work right away. It's about putting in the reps, so to speak. It's about retraining your human. Your human is overstimulated. It wants to go on its fucking phone right away. It wants to do this, this, and this. It wants the quick fix too. It wants instant gratification. It's also probably very addicted to artificial and simulated dopamine every 7 to 10 seconds. So there's a lot of awareness of, like, the person not able to do that. And then what you get to do is, like, hey, we're just going to sit down. We're just going to sit down and do it. And what you could do too, and I think this was something I read in Atomic Habits, or maybe I watched it on the After School special. What I always tell people, and I really would like to give credit to that, because it's a brilliant idea. It's like, instead of trying to sit down and do a full 60 minutes of breath work, because that seems really daunting for people,
Mm.
just start it. Just start it and just go do one round. And if at the end of one round, if you want to get up, get up. If you don't, try another round. Just see what happens. And when we kind of remove this expectation, or this, like, huge thing, people tend to eventually kind of at least try it. It's like the cold. If you had never done cold therapy, and I go, you have to go in for 5 minutes, that you probably would avoid that. But, like, I can't do that for 5 minutes. But what if I go, like, Just get in. All you got to do is get in. If you want to get out right away, get out right away. And you're like, oh, okay. So now the person is like, okay, I could do that. I can maybe get in. And I'm like, yeah, even if you don't want to sit down, that's okay. If you just want to put your legs in, that's okay. See how long you can stay in there for. But there's nothing you have to do. Just see. And we start kind of getting our person curious, right? Because curiosity is really powerful. So, and it builds and it consistently builds. So I think when we approach things, it's even like to the gym, like if you're trying to go to the gym and you have all these fears around the gym, because that's what's stopping us is the mind, the fear, right? So it's like, well, how can we like get that abused puppy to come out of the kennel just a little bit. How can we
Mhm.
get that paw out? Because if we put too much, it's too scared. It takes time to hold space for these fears, and that's why a shaman is good. That's why what I do works really well. But eventually, that scared person will see who's guiding it. Yeah, and then it's like, oh, the universe has me. It fully has me. It has me, and that's what you like. Fuck, and that's infinite. And soon the person really starts trusting in the universe fully, whether it's a meditation, whether that's in anything, you just fully trust after a while. But the trick is, I think, is again like really conceptualizing on a very like almost like wisdom level of you are not your mind, you are not your thoughts. That's the big one. And I just created a program that will be coming out soon. It's like how to manage your anxiety, and it gets into a lot of the stuff we're talking about with mapping your mind, so to speak, and from a neurological perspective. But it
Mhm.
also can, the lessons always have these little gems where it's like you have a mind, but you aren't the mind. So it's a combination of stepping outside of the mind, but also like, well, if you're not the mind, who are you? And then planting these little seeds. And then there's also then an exercise, like a meditation to connect those dots even more. And it's like going to be a 28-day program where it's really kind of
Mm.
neat. Yeah. So we're combining like the science with the woo woo with, yeah, with the meditation actual practice. So eventually, like, it's going to be amazing when people really kind of just start falling into the understanding of presence for their person to keep zooming out and understand how it all works.
I couldn't agree more. It sounds really like that, a big part. It's also new for me, came really through while you were talking, is the relationship that you seem to cultivate with your person. Is also like a learning curve, basically. So there's like a sort of how you spark that curiosity, how you talk to him or her, how you nurture it, how you hold space for him or her. This relationship, I haven't looked at it that way, but it really shines through when you're talking, and I'm already getting a lot out of it just listening, because I'm really sort of, it's really practical. It really helps me, to what we also talked about earlier, to be so empathetic to it. It's just like, dude, man, I'm so sorry that it's so hard on you right now. How can we how can
Mm-hmm.
improve the situation right now for both of us?
Yeah. It's great. It's great when you start building that relationship with your person. Like pure, like it's so beautiful, and with everything. Like if someone puts a plate of cookies down, my person likes cookies, right?
Mm.
But like by the fifth cookie, I have to be like, bro, last cookie. And he's like, okay, fair enough, last cookie. Like it's the funny thing too. It's like if my person ends up getting on the phone too much, I have that conversation with him, like, bro, you've been on your phone way too much today. Let's go. No phone while we're working out. No phone while we're working out. And his autopilot ass sometimes goes over and grabs the phone. I'm like, yo, put that thing down. Put it down.
Mm.
Put it down. And so you get really good at like shifting, really, really good at shifting. And when he casts judgment, I'd be like, hey, alchemize that right now. And he alchemizes it. And it's cool because he's getting more and more intelligent. He's doing less of these bad habits and better good ones over time. So that's the spiritual solitude I think a lot of us aren't aware of taking. Like I've been mostly by myself, I would say, for the last year. I had my separation, a new chapter with my previous wife, and it allowed me to really kind of step into this space of solitude to really kind of start really doing this inner work and have these profound conversations on a way gnarlier level. It's wonderful. It's wonderful, like geeking him up, getting him excited for things, and also asking him what he wants. What do you want in this lifetime? What do you see in this lifetime? What do you want to experience? And things are really important to him, like a divine woman and a divine child, and paying attention to how much he takes from the earth, and how he wants to contribute, and what lets him feel fulfilled in many ways. And so I work with him in those ways too. I honor him in those ways, and I question him when he wants to do something that's not fully aligned. Like, where does that actually come from?
Mm.
Yeah, and it's really kind of neat having this type of dialogue with him. And he is only getting smarter. He's only becoming more love. Barely ever reactive, to be honest. The last few months, I have zero reaction over anything. My person has zero reaction over anything. Like, anything can happen almost, it seems. I'm just like, okay, good or bad. It's like, oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah. I'm trying to be respectful of your time. Do you have a little bit more time, or do you have a hard
Yeah,
hard cut?
I have about 15 more minutes, I would say, before a breathwork client comes through.
Okay, cool, sweet. Well then, because I quickly wanna, like, I have like 2, 3 questions. I like short questions toward the end, but one more that just came now is also again very close to my personal journey. Is surrender. Is something that I'm so working with a lot, because it's coming from like my teacher Michael Singer. He's big on surrendering, and it's basically overlapping with everything that we are talking about. However, with this thing that you were just sharing, of just like, being this observer and having that distance, what's your take on, because you were talking a little bit about goals and visions and stuff that your person has. So how does that affect surrendering versus basically not letting the world walk all over you, because there's gonna potentially, maybe you're going to be confronted with individuals or situations where it's either A or B, or maybe basically you are confronted with scenario A, and it's just coming into your life, and there's resistance coming, and then it's basically like, okay, so is this now just like being in harmony with what is, meaning surrendering to this circumstance or this person who is, and I'm not saying like they're trying to hurt you like physically or something, because then it's quite obvious, but more like, I don't know, what could it be? I received an offer, for example, from someone to do something for them the other day. There has been like sort of like a history and sort of dynamics, and I was really on the fence of whether or not I should do it, because there would be some potential upside for me in some way, worldly stuff. But there was like resistance where it's just like sort of where this relationship is at and stuff, and what's going on with my life. I'm just like, there's like a feeling of it not being sort of aligned. So then I was really on the fence of, okay, is this now a point for me to surrender right now? Is this just like a resistance from my mind and ego? Or like, I was really not so,
Yeah, I think that's a tough one. I think seeing where that resistance comes from, and then you'll be able to see if it comes from a place of alignment with divinity or the ego. And the way that you can tell is one comes from fear and one comes from love. Pretty simple, right? And so that's how I usually, so if I feel resistance towards something, I ask myself, I go, why do I have resistance? And I can look at the situation, not with judgment, but just with awareness of my energy. And if it doesn't align, I'm okay with that. no judgment on them, but I also honor my alignment, my frequency, my energy, and I choose something else. I'll go a different
Mm.
path, and there's no judgment. Like, that's fine. The trick is like, to do it without judgment. So you can honor yourself without judgment. You can honor all of that kind of stuff. And so the real thing is always like kind of sitting with what is, and sometimes that can be hard. But that's why meditation is so powerful, because as soon as you probably go into the nothingness, you'll know the answer like right away. Like, oh yeah, you know what? That person, because there's really only two ways of doing things: service to self or service to others. That's it. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times for me, if I feel resistance with working with an individual, um, I can tell like, okay, they're still in a place of service to self, and that's fine. But that doesn't align with me. I'm right now in a place of service to others, and that's where I like to lead from. So that's how I usually make my choices.
I love that.
Hmm.
Mm.
And most
Thank you. Yeah,
people,
that really
yeah,
helps me. Yeah.
yeah. So if the person is like for instance, if Walmart came to me right now, and be like, Justin, we want to make you a part of Walmart, and we'll give you all this money, and like, okay, yeah, there's a part of that could help me financially do X, Y, and Z, but I'm also then working with a company that does X, Y, and Z that doesn't align with me. And so like, does this business align with me? Yeah, it can help me do this, but at what cost? And like, if I want to know how that really sits with me, I can meditate on that, bring myself to a more conscious, more loving awareness space, and then have a better idea. But a lot of times, if you see how these businesses do work and how they're about profit, they're not actually about being of service. It becomes very simple. So for me, like my whole life, I always turned down supplement companies when I was in bodybuilding. I turned down a lot of these things because I knew if I were to promote this for money, but I didn't believe in the product or I didn't think it was safe for kids or whatnot, that never aligned with me. So I would turn these businesses and companies down to be of service in the right way, not to just service self. And that's kind of in everything. There's always these forks in the road. Most of them we have no idea they exist, but we kind of come to these forks every day, and we usually choose service to self or choose service to others. And another simple one would be, say, buying a plastic water bottle, right? So we are aware now that plastic is no good, that it contaminates the water. We're aware that it's toxic. We're aware that it doesn't like decompose for 300 plus years or something. We're aware of these things. But say you get thirsty while you're driving in your car and you stop off at a gas station and you want a drink of water. Well, you are aware that what this causes is buying this water bottle and supporting and giving your energy, your currency, your money to a business or to a company that makes this bottle without mindfulness, without loving awareness, without consciousness, and it's only for profit. So right there, you can choose to buy that water to service self in that very moment, right? And it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
seem like that big of a deal, but you have thousands of forks in the road that you do all day long that you're not simply aware of. So I try to become aware of those forks in the road through my meditation so I can remove the ignorance of how I go through my life so I can actually choose service to others. So I'll go without, if I go into a gas station and I can't find water that's served in an aluminum can, I won't buy the water. I'll wait. So that there was a choice in that fork. I chose service to others instead of self. And so I kind of do that with everything from the clothes that I buy to the furniture that I get made to the food that I purchase. It becomes about conscious consumerism. And that's where I saw the biggest growth within my life was the actual walking of the walk, right? So you can do the meditation, but if you don't make any behavioral changes, your frequency is not going to change. Your energy won't change. And it becomes a lot harder that road. So you have a lot of people, I think, battling with that is because they actually don't do the behavioral change. It really comes down to seeing those forks. And sometimes those forks are really hard to change.
Mm.
Sometimes they're traditional forks from like family passed down. Sometimes they're coping forks for your anxiety and depression, right? It's like another an easy one for me is like Netflix and Hulu and Disney. Like I realize that these companies are always pushing a political narrative. I also realize that they over sexualize children and people. And so I became aware of this. I became aware of what they're putting out there. And like, yeah, it could have a good show here. It could have a good show there. But do I really want to take my currency, my energy, my money that I worked for, and and then give this company that has these motives and support
Mm.
them and put that back out in the world? And the answer is no. So then I go without Netflix. I go without Hulu. I go without Disney. And, I don't get to have those shows, or I don't get to partake in that. But that's a service to others right there. And so these are just like kind of like small examples of how I kind of try to go through my days, become very, very mindful and aware of the energy I deal in on an everyday basis. The same thing as where I buy my food. So instead of going to a grocery store that sells, even if it's organic beef, is a regenerative farm? Is it made with mindfulness and love and consciousness? And so I want to make sure that I support a business that is all about regenerative and giving back to the land. And they're doing this. That means there's love in that food. And that love is now coming to your plate. All right. And you took your love because you were mindful enough to give back to them. It's a love transaction. And you do that with
Yeah.
your furniture. You do it with your furniture. You do it with your clothes. You do it with your products. You do it with everything. You do it with everything. And that's when life gets fucking awesome. Abundance, and your energy, and you're vibrating at such a level because you're conscious and mindful and aware of how you operate. And it just keeps getting better and better and better over time.
So inspiring. Yeah, I'm looking at my list here of topics that I wanted to touch on with you, and a lot really just really organically sort of found its way into this conversation, which I absolutely love. Conscious consumerism was one of them. I was hoping to speak to you about that as well. Really inspiring, seeing everything just like as energy and sort of like this exchange. What do you want to really like sort of let in your life? Really beautiful. Big one also for me. I can take away a lot of from that and integrate into my life. And I feel like wow, there would be so much more that I would actually like to explore with you some other time.
Of course, I'd be happy to come back on.
However, so quickly, just the if individuals sort of like resonated with your message, how can we find you, and also what can we expect then? How can we work with you? Yeah.
Yeah, you can find me right now. We're just actually relaunching or launching our new website, Nirvana Mind Body at .com. And nirvanamindbody.com is the website that you can come find me at, and you can see all the different ways that I work with individuals and see what one would could resonate with you. You can also find me on my IG, of course, Justin D. Lovato, and just reach out via direct message if need be. And we can always just start off with a conversation and then see how that goes and see if it's a good fit. Usually, as I mentioned before, it leads into these wonderful types of conscious conversations, mentorship once a week, or however you see fit. As you get into the breath work and the meditation, we also have wonderful in-person events that we throw once a month. We also have Zoom events that we throw every month. Some big news too. This actually hasn't been released at all, but we are now in the works of building a center here in downtown Austin. I'm looking for land to purchase in April.
Wow.
And yeah, it'll be a full center, Nirvana Mind and Body Center. And it will have everything from breath work to ecstatic dance to the cold and hot therapy to cacao ceremonies, essentially a place for people to truly reconnect. And yeah, so I'm very excited for what's to come. Um, Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. So
Dude,
yeah, that's
that's
where, yeah,
incredible.
thank you. Yeah. Yeah, lots of big news
Yeah,
coming.
that's so exciting. Yeah, I don't know. I actually stepped away from my plans of visiting the US for some other reasons, but now I don't know. It just keeps coming, keeps getting better, man. It's just like so many different like people I find so awesome and inspiring, and it's just like all located in the US and doing awesome things. And now you drop that bomb, so I think I gotta really stop by. Wow, that sounds incredible.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
also I always express this, and I truly mean it. If there's individuals listening to this and really want to get into this work, and you cannot afford the services that are listed, um, I will work with you at any cost, even if it's absolutely free. If you're an individual that doesn't have the funds to get into this work, I'll talk with you. I will send you my programs at no charge, just so you can kind of start doing this work. It's really important that everybody has access to this stuff. That's the most important thing, with this work. So if you are an individual, don't be shy. Reach out, hit me up. We'll get you started. We'll have awesome conversations. We'll get you where you need to be.
thank you. Thank you for your service, Justin.
Thank you.
Meaning everything you do and also coming on the show means a lot. I
Thank you.
appreciate it deeply. So thank you.
Thank you.